I think part of the thing that the reason I asked the other question about Afghanistan is that your heart just sinks when you think about this unseen enemy, this sort of implacable coming back. They never see them except in this one case. You want to talk about that? The one guy who did see the enemy?
I think as a device in the film that you don't see the enemy, it's very useful. I mean, the soldiers, we were coming from a soldier's perspective, and the fact that the soldiers don't see the enemy, then you begin to ask, like, what is going on? Who are we fighting against? I mean, you raise those questions. It's funny, a lot of people sometimes you feel the expectation is that they want you to make a political film to explain the war to them.
Yeah.
And yet, in fact, the right wing kind of, thinks that the soldiers join out of patriotism, the left wing out of economic necessity, and in fact, it's much more complex than that, ideas than that. And whether you're left wing or right wing, we wanted to make a film that we thought, we want to make a visceral war film that people look at and that they just understand that experience of what the soldiers are going through.
But I do think there's something specific to Afghanistan, the mountain terrain, the invisible enemy. The people are native to the area. We are outsiders. We don't belong there on some level. And when you see when you see the soldiers talking to the locals, the Afghanistan older men with the beards, it's terrible watching how they communicate or don't.
I mean, just to end carry on from that and to end what I'm saying, it's like the point of the film is it's a much more interesting dialogue, not to force feed somebody a political point of view. I mean, in the end, the ambiguities where you feel you like the guys in points and you don't like them in other points, or you see them working with the elders in a way that you think is constructive, in other ways which is completely unconstructive, then that makes you analyze and think about the war in a much more useful way than us coming along and saying, this is wrong or this is right, we support the war, we don't support the war. I mean, people have to make up their own minds, and America is in a very important place at the moment, and the surge is beginning, and there are going to be some tough questions this year.
No question about that. The other part of the film that is so effective is the interviews that took place afterwards in Italy. Talk about how that happened and what you got from them.
We wanted to make a completely experiential film, and early on we decided we didn't want interviews with generals, with politicians, because the soldiers couldn't interview those people, so we wouldn't. That presented the problem of, well, what do we do about a narration? The verite, it's intense verite, but it may not completely hang together, and we need an outside narration, but we realized an outside voice would sort of break the dream that you're in the Korengal Valley for 90 minutes, and we didn't want to break that illusion. The solution we came up with was to interview the guys in Italy. They went back to Vicenza, Italy, to their base, so that their voices would provide the voiceover narration that we needed to glue the verite together. It was a very pragmatic decision. What happened was, 3 or 4 months later, we tracked them down to Vicenza. The platoon was about to split up, about to break up forever. The full range of emotions was now coming out of them. They got drunk for the first month and, whatever for the second month. And by month number 3, the emotional effects of the deployment were in full bloom. But they were also in a safe place where they could talk about difficult, painful feelings. And so we showed up and we set up our studio and we started talking to them, and it completely surpassed every expectation we had. It almost, to our surprise, those interviews ended up almost being a form of sort of therapy. Like, we were older guys. We're not the battalion shrink. We're not their parents. We're not an officer. We were older guys, but we had been there with them. We knew what they were referring to, but they weren't accountable to us. And in some ways, it was a perfect sort of dynamic for them to really let out things that had been bottled up and that they didn't understand. And in the end, to our real surprise, some of the most powerful, affecting moments in the movie are not firefights in the Korengal Valley. They took place in Italy in a studio, and we were doing back-to-back interviews, and it was some of the most emotionally draining things I've ever done. I mean, I was like fighting tears the whole time. It was incredible.
The music that you play, where does the guitar music come from in the film that you show that you use at the end?
There's a number of different. We wanted to use music that was inherent to the soldiers' experience, and so we just used the music that they play on the guitar. One was a song, a Blink-182 song.
But it's not Restrepo playing.
No, it's not Restrepo playing. No.
I wish it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would have worked, because part of it is the idea of the loss of that soul, that artistic soul. Yeah, and, you know. Okay, I'm getting worked up myself. What are your hopes as far as distribution is concerned? I know that National Geographic Channel is going to show the film in the fall. Is that correct?
That's right. They bought the broadcast rights.
What's your hope at Sundance?
You're good at that. You want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, we were looking for theatrical distribution.
I hope you get it.
Well, we're looking for it not just because it's like a gratifying experience for a filmmaker to see their film in the theaters. We just really think that this film, it's one of the most visceral documentary war films I think that's out there. You know, I've made other or been a cameraman in other documentary war films, and this for me is something that really goes that a lot of other documentaries don't go. And in that kind of visceral nature, I think you only really get that on the big screen. You don't get the same experience on the television. And we think that, you know, there are 22 million American households who have loved ones either currently serving in the military or, you know, who have been in the military. And like in the Italy interviews, those guys don't come back home to their wives and their loved ones and tell them what's going on. There's like a black hole. And this film will be of great consolation, and we know that's the case because we showed it to the soldiers' wives already, is of great consolation to explaining to those families what their loved ones go through. And we're not talking about, you know, getting distribution for some kind of art house movie. We're talking about, like, you know, we think that Middle America it really has a thirst for this kind of thing. I mean, sure, fiction films are out there about the war now, and there's that fantastic film, The Hurt Locker. It's great, but soldiers and their families know that the soldier in the scene who gets killed in the Hurt Locker, at the end of the scene, gets up and walks away, and it doesn't happen in our film, and they know that, and that's why they really are drawn to documentary film.
It's after seeing this film that I wonder if anyone could really stage war again effectively, for me, having seen the real thing. I don't know. I think that's part of what's going on with this kind of digital, portable filmmaking.
Yeah.
It makes things possible that weren't possible before. You guys each carried a camera, right?
Yeah.
Yep. The cameras weighed 4 or 5 pounds. The gear was very, very heavy out there, and we went on every patrol. We did everything. Had the cameras weighed 20 pounds, we physically could not have done it. But now they weigh 5 pounds, and it works.
And also you have scenes in the film that I think it's interesting to hear people's reactions, audiences' reactions and critics' reactions, and people are saying, like, you have to remind yourself that this isn't scripted. And there are scenes, you know, there's a scene like at the end of Rock Avalanche where they're smoking cigarettes and the sunlight's filtering through the trees, and they're saying, like, you know, he was a good man. Like, they've just seen their friend die, and they're saying, like, the guys are blaming it on themselves. And the parts of the film that I really love, that you feel like you're in a fiction film, but then you're just like, you realize that this isn't fiction, this is real.
You do get to know them very well. I was particularly struck by the young guy who was raised by hippies and nobody gave him any guns.
Yeah.
And there he is going, and you have this one shot where he's like, yeah, and he's going at it, you know.
Yeah.
He was amazing, that character.
Yeah. And in the film you see his kind of transformation.
Yeah.
So by the end, when he's like, you know, I just wanted to see them when I killed them, and it's just, you realize this arc of what's happening to many men. And in some ways, the idea of the name Restrepo, we were thinking, it's like there is a Restrepo generation out there. There's a bunch of young men who've been fighting since 2001, nearly 10 years, and they come back to America and they become almost unseen and unheard, and yet they're carrying around that trauma that you see on the faces of the guys in Italy.
And a little bit on your faces. Am I wrong?
It's a lot of late nights.
We've discovered we've been. You incorporate it, absolutely. Yeah. No, this whole thing is emotionally complicated for both of us, I think.
Did you ever see Touching the Void?
Yeah.
You remind me of that. I feel that sense of admiration and awe that you were able to go do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.